Hi, Miss Ella. Hi, everyone. Were other composers of the modern period as innovative as Stravinsky? Well, it would be hard to top Stravinsky, but I'm pretty sure a lot of composers tried, because the modern period was all about being innovative, about being different. For the first time in music history, we have composers working at the same time who sound completely different from each other. Not just different personalities, different musical languages. Do you remember this music from the Baroque period by Bach? All composers in the Baroque period were writing with independent voices and ornamentation. Or this music from the classical period by Mozart. Most classical composers were using simple melodies, clear textures, balanced phrases. Or this music from the Romantic period. Music by Frédéric Chopin. Almost all Romantic composers were using a lot of emotion in their music like that. But then what about this from the modern period? That's music by Sergei Prokofiev, another Russian composer like Stravinsky working at the same time, but with a completely different musical language from what you heard earlier from The Firebird and The Rite of Spring. Let's check out some others who were composing music around the same time, the first half of the 20th century, each creating his or her own new musical language. The Hungarian composer Béla Bartók made his language out of the folk music of his native land. The Austrian composer Arnold Schoenberg invented a way of writing music that made all 12 notes equally important. He did away with the idea of a tonic, that is, one main note that we always come home to in classical music. When all 12 notes are sounding in a particular order in a particular piece, it might sound something like this. The French woman Germaine Taillefer created a musical language that sounds fun and fresh and somehow very old and very new at the same time. The American, Charles Ives, liked to mash up different sounds. He would play different tunes at the same time, so you feel like you're standing in the middle of different kinds of music. And the French composer Olivier Messiaen made up his language out of bird songs. All different languages. And it was the same with the buildings during that time, the first half of the 20th century. You might get a building that's covered with weird decoration, or a building with no decoration at all, or a building with a futuristic look. Even with all these differences, I think there are some traits in common among all the different kinds of modern music. For instance, they tend to change a lot. So in the music I played by Prokofiev, a few measures of this, a few measures of that. Also, the idea of contrast that began in the classical period became greater and more emotional in the Romantic period is off the charts in the modern period. Modern composers might go for the most extreme high or low, the most extreme calm, or most extreme agitation. And then there's dissonance. There's a lot more dissonance in modern music. Dissonance means sounds that are harsh, like this, or this, or this. Okay? In earlier times, dissonance was used just very sparingly as a little touch of spice. But in the modern period, it's all spicy. So you get chords like this in the Rite of Spring. Right? Or chords like this in the Prokofiev. Different musical languages, but some things in common. And why so much dissonance in the modern period? Well, there was suddenly a lot more traffic, a lot more factories and mechanization, and really horrible conflicts all over the world. This was the sound that composers were hearing in the first half of the 20th century. Because many modern composers were creating musical languages of their own, some musicians and audiences felt left behind back when the music was new. But now, 100 years later, audiences and musicians love this music. Of course, there are still composers creating new sounds today. We call this the contemporary period, the period you live in. Today's music sounds like today. It may sound odd at first, but over time, I think it will come to be the music we love the best. Well, we've gotten to explore Baroque, classical, romantic, and now modern music together. It's been wonderful for me to share with you ideas about the music that matters so much to me.